Hello, hello, hello. It's so wonderful to see you all. Thank you all for joining us. This is a rather special edition of CPW, this particular little helpful Zoom class, because this year is the 200th anniversary of the publication of The Night Before Christmas, otherwise known as A Visit from St. Nicholas. Everybody give it a round of applause. Woo! Excellent, excellent. So, a couple of things. This particular one, we're going to put in a lot of comments in the chat because as we crank through this, there's going to be a lot of input. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with CPW, you got to know that True is all about the nerd. I am a huge Santa nerd. All these books behind me are all on Santa Claus and storytelling and folklore and mythology, and it's my one of my true loves. And so for me, The Night Before Christmas is just it's one of the pieces I absolutely love doing, and I do it everywhere I go. And a couple of caveats right off the top. Number one, I do not have a doctorate in English or historical linguistics or anything like that. I'm just a fanboy. I love The Night Before Christmas and the interesting controversy about it and all the imagery and symbology in it. I just love it. And so, am I going to say some things in this workshop that are probably wrong? You can almost count on it. Feel free to throw in your version, but the thing to remember is this piece is 200 years old. And so there's a lot of cool perspective that we're going to throw in here. Miss Cat, would you do me the favor of calling up the slides?
I would be happy to.
Now, just for you folks who didn't know, I literally tossed these slides to her like 2 seconds ago. So
Is
I
that
do.
front cover slide showing?
Yep, I do see it.
Excellent. Here we go.
All right, excellent. All right, so we're going to start off with our traditional CPW credos. Who can tell me what ABH stands for?
Always be
Always
humble.
be humble.
Excellent. ABL.
Always be learning.
Always be learning.
Always be learning. Absolutely. The minute you stop learning, you might as well stick a fork in you, you're done. NBC.
Never break
Never break
character.
character.
And when are we in character?
Whenever
Always.
we can be seen.
Who said
or
always? Who
That
said
would
always?
be
All right. No, you are not in character all the time.
Oh,
No, and there's a reason I make this distinction, and every time somebody steps into that little puddle, and that is that when we're in character, a lot of times being in character uses up a lot of our resources, our performing resources and stuff like that. And so we want to spend our performing coins wisely. And so if they can see you, if they can hear you, you're in character. If you're behind the stage and there are kids, looking at you from around the corner of the stage, you're in character. Generally speaking, not a good idea for Santa to be flipping people off on the freeway. Okay, just saying that. Now, not that you won't want to. Now, but the thing is if they can see you and hear you, that's when you need to be in character. If you're down in your green room and you're just taking a break, you don't need to be in character. Okay. Next one up, great performers do what? Who can tell me that one?
Practice and perform all year long.
Ron, we're just going to have to give you your gold star. Of course, you have been to more workshops than pretty much anybody except for Rachel. So, absolutely, great performers practice and perform throughout the year. One of the things that I can promise you that the people who are not part of CPW are learning really quick is they get into their season and they're walking up to a door and going, crap, I forgot the, and then they're stressing out. And then that stress affects their performance. And so one of the things that I keep saying in CPW is I'm not training you to be a great performer. I'm trying to train you to be a great performer when everything is going horribly wrong. Because it will. I want you to be the swan. All grace and beauty upstairs, all action downstairs. All right, next slide, please. All right, let's do a little call and response because guess what, baby? It is on. We are coming into call and response territory. Here we go. I say Merry, you say Christmas. Merry,
Christmas.
Merry.
Christmas.
You know, folks, you can unmute yourself. It's okay. I say jingle, you say bells. Jingle,
Bell.
jingle.
Bell.
I say happy, you say holidays. Happy,
Holidays.
happy.
Holidays.
I say feliz, you say Navidad. Feliz,
Da.
feliz.
Ah.
I say happy, you say Hanukkah. Happy,
Da.
happy.
Ah.
All right. I say milk, you say cookies. Milk,
Cookies.
milk.
Cookies.
All right. The roof, the roof, the reindeer on the roof.
Roof. The roof. Reindeer on the roof.
Roof.
You better get to bed if you want your presents.
Better get to bed if you want your presents.
The roof, the penguins are on the roof.
The roof. The roof. The penguins are on the roof.
That doesn't make sense. They're from the South Pole.
That doesn't make sense. They're from the South
South
Pole.
All right, so I'm going to lead it and then you respond. So, hey,
Hey.
ho,
Ho.
Oh,
ho, ho, ho,
Ho. Ho.
oh,
ho, ho, ho.
Ho, ho, ho.
Ho.
When I say Christmas, you say presents. Christmas.
Presents.
Christmas.
Presents.
Presents.
present.
All right, let's give a shout out for Mrs. Claus. A round of applause for Mrs. Claus.
A round of applause for Mr.
A round of applause for Santa Claus.
A round of applause for Mrs.
Shake your rears for the reindeer.
Take your rear.
Shake your bells for all the elves.
Take your bells for all the elves.
There you go. All right. So that's just some examples of some call and response. When I say who runs the North Pole, you say Mrs. C. Who runs the North Pole?
Mrs.
C.
Who runs the North Pole?
Mrs. C.
He's hip. She's jolly. She knows who's nice and who is naughty. Who runs the North Pole?
Completely goes down.
Mrs. C.
Who runs the North Pole?
Mrs. C.
So there's all this fun stuff that we can be doing and just bringing the energy. The minute we get on stage, it's going to pull people together. And the thing is once we get into the call and response, people feel like they're part of it. We're saying, play with us. And that's where we live, is in the realm of play. Next slide, please. This is the 200th anniversary. Everybody go, dum, dum, dum.
Dum, dum, dum.
But who wrote it? Was it Clement Clark Moore or Henry Livingston Jr.? Everybody go, Well, the truth is, I'm not going to answer that question because there is not conclusive evidence one way or the other as far as I'm concerned. But a lot of people will definitely give you specific ideas of what they think. So I want to put some things in context real quick. Number one, when this poem was written, trains, cars, and telegraphs were just still experiments. I mean, they were just barely starting to get off the ground. None of them were working. There weren't any trains. There weren't any cars. We were still in the age of sail and horse. And so riding around in a sleigh, if you were in the northern part of America, especially on the East Coast, riding around in a sleigh around Christmas time made perfect sense. At this time, when this poem came out, there were only 24 states. Slavery still existed, although it was being phased out in New York at the time that this was being written. And then it was 97 years before women would still have the right, would have the right to vote. So that's how old this piece is. It is old, okay? And the fact that we're still singing it and telling it and performing it 200 years later, there's definitely some magic in the bottle when it comes to the night before Christmas. And by the way, a lot of people say a visit from St. Nicholas. I always abbreviate it to TNBC, the night before Christmas. So a couple of things to consider, things to make you go, It was first attributed to Clement Clark Moore in 1837. So it was first published anonymously in 1823, and it was published under the title An Account of a Visit from St. Nicholas, and was done by the Troy Sentinel December 23rd, so just before Christmas, 1823. And so it gets attributed by a friend of Clement Clark Moore 14 years later. Now, they had alluded to the person being a person of high standing in the community where Clement Clark Moore lived. Now, some things to know about Clement Clark Moore. He came from money. His family got in early and owned a good chunk of the island of Manhattan. And his father, in fact, was the one who read the last rites, who gave the last rites to Hamilton after in the duel where Hamilton gets shot. And so he was, Protestant and also pretty religious, and he was working in a college that was essentially a religious school. And so he had some things he had to be very careful about. Now, the thing is he had 6 children, and to all accounts, he absolutely loved the children, and he had written poems and everything to his children. And so I look at some of those poems and go, I could maybe see him writing it. But the thing was he was also recorded as being kind of stiff and dour. And Henry Beekman Livingston was known to be a man of action and a man about town, very fun loving, and also a traveler who would have seen the reindeer in real life in the places they came from. And so a lot of his perspectives and also his experience with the Dutch definitely could have put him in a good position to write it as well. But the thing is Henry Beekman Livingston Jr. died February 29th in 1828. So what that means is he was alive probably for about 7 years of overlap where he's alive and The Night Before Christmas has been published. Now, back in those days, is it possible that the two of them never saw each other's posting? Absolutely. Remember, no radio, no telegram, no television, and people were printing newspapers 3 or 4 times a day. That was the news and the media. Broadsheets were going out all the time. So a couple of things to keep in mind. First of all, it's got rhyming couplets. There are 28 rhyming couplets in the poem. And the poem was originally published under the title Account of a Visit from St. Nicholas, and it immediately caught fire. They did 5 printings after it was after the first initial printing because it was that popular, and then everybody else started picking up. When it was published, it was anonymous. Nobody knew who had written it at first, and was anonymous for many years. So the 28 rhyming couplets, and it's written in a style of poetry that was popular at the time, but not used so much anymore. And we're going to get into that. That style, that meter was called anapestic tetrameter. And then here's the fun part. Donner and Blitzen, and we'll come back to this, were originally named Dunder und Blitzen, or Bliksem, and literally thunder and lightning, but in Old Dutch. And then their names go through a few permutations. We'll get to that. And so Donner, thunder, was originally Dunder. That becomes Dunder, and then that becomes Donner. Next slide, please. So I want to kind of inspire you to do research about this piece because a lot was going on. Literally, Christmas was forming before our very eyes when this all was coming together. And so there was a group of people called the Knickerbockers in Philadelphia and New York, and they did not agree with a lot of the concepts of Christmas. They weren't, because Christmas at that time, after the Puritans said, okay, we'll allow you to start having Christmas again. Some parts of the United States never gave up Christmas. If you were Dutch, German, Spanish, what have you, Christmas was still a thing for you, but not so much for the Puritans. But when Christmas came back, it was a party. Christmas up until that point was rowdy. It was a class thing. The whole Boxing Day, the idea of one giving gifts down and giving gifts to the king. And remember, back in those days, when you wanted to party with somebody, you couldn't just hop in your car and drive 100 miles. If you're going to go visit somebody, it was going to be for a period of time. Another thing to keep in mind is at that time period, Christmas was not, for a lot of people, not the focus. New Year's Day and New Year's Eve was much more how people saw the big celebration. And then also that time period of the 12 days of Christmas. So there were different emphases of what you did. And it was, the racing was a big thing at that time. Gambling was a big thing. Partying. In Stephen Nissenbaum's The Battle for Christmas, he talks about how out on the streets in New York and Philadelphia, Boston, they had great big smoking bowls full of booze that you would get, and then they would come up with what they call Calathumpian bands, and they would come party for you. They would come wassailing, and wassailing was and mumming and so on and so forth. In fact, what we do with Halloween is actually part of the old Christmas tradition. When people say happy holidays, what they're actually saying is happy holy days. And the holy days actually start right around Halloween and then go all the way into February. There were so many holy days, they couldn't keep track of them all. And so they just, All Souls Day, All Saints Day. They just we'll get them all together into one and we'll celebrate them all. So anyway, when they were going around saying, "Oh, bring us the figgy pudding, oh, bring us the figgy pudding, oh, bring us the figgy pudding, and bring it right here. We won't go until we get some. We won't go until we get some. We won't go until we get some. So bring it right here." That was a threat. They were not joking. They would knock down your door, come into your house, and party for you if you weren't forthcoming with the joy and the tribute. And so a group of people called the Knickerbockers, more educated, higher class, so on and so forth, said, what can we do to retool Christmas? And so a lot of different ideas of what Santa was like and how they were going to change Santa from being a dour Catholic saint to being this kind of party animal, but not too much party. We're going to make it more about families. That was the Knickerbockers taking St. Nicholas into the alley, working him over and giving us what we see as Santa Claus today. So also, the Knickerbockers' history of New York. Now, for those of you who don't know, Washington Irving is probably one of the first fantasy writers in the United States. We get the Headless Horseman. We get Rip Van Winkle. And he wrote this book called The Knickerbockers' History of New York in 1812. And the cool thing about this book was this is also the start of one of the very first viral campaigns. He came up with some really cool things. He was only about 24 years old and working for several printers. And so what he did is he came up with a story that there was this guy named Dietrich Knickerbocker who had written a story about the Dutch in New York, because everybody loved to poke fun at the Dutch. And what he did was he said, this guy, Dietrich Knickerbocker, skipped out on his hotel bill, but left his book. And so he was going to be publishing pieces of the book day after day, right, until Dietrich Knickerbocker showed up and paid off his bill. Well, there was no Dietrich Knickerbocker. Dietrich Knickerbocker never existed. And this was all part of a viral marketing campaign. Washington Irving went to all the surrounding papers and bought ads saying, Dietrich Knickerbocker, come and pay your bill, or I'm going to start publishing parts of your book. Well, the humor in the book was hilarious by those standards. People loved it. And everybody said, man, I love this. I just wish I didn't have to wait day for day, for this stuff to get published. And Dietrich Knickerbocker looked at them and said, funny you should mention that. I happen to have whole copies I can sell you right now. The best part of this is people started seeing Dietrich Knickerbocker everywhere. Okay, they were reporting seeing him down by the lake or over at this pub or what have you. And if you read the Knickerbocker's History of New York, he definitely describes the Dutch as being a lot like hobbits or dwarves. And in his description, we see one of the very first descriptions of Santa Claus in the New World. And Santa Claus is a bowsprit, a carved bowsprit on the front of a ship called the Good Vrow. And the Good Vrow is this remarkable magical ship that was completely round and high fronted in the front and high fronted in the back and could go any direction. And it was supposedly carved in the shape of the harbor mistress of Rotterdam. And so this remarkable lady ship flies into the New World with St. Nicholas with a wide brim hat, Dutch knickers and short coat and a pipe. And that's how Santa Claus comes to the New World. Later on in the book, their version of St. Nicholas, he is not somebody who's sitting by the sidelines. He shows up all the time. And one of the first times we see him is with a flying cart being pulled by horses. And at one point, he puffs in his pipe and fills the area full of smoke. And he tells the young man, climb the tree and you'll see what New York is going to look like. And the young man climbs the tree, and the smoke from St. Nicholas's pipe gives him the amazement of what New York will be someday. And so that influence of Dietrich of the history of New York, Dietrich Knickerbocker, influenced Clement Clark Moore or the other gentleman, depending on who you believe wrote it. Miss Kat, can you bring the slides back for a second? So, if you want to nerd out, Kat, can you go back one slide, please? Go find Knickerbocker's History of New York. Okay. There were two versions of it. The first one, the second one was adapted and re-edited and spun up a little bit. So there are kind of two versions. It is in public domain, so you can find it online in public domain. It's definitely worth a read, I think, if you're a nerd. All right, and then two other things I want to point out. This is 1812. Then the Night Before Christmas comes out, and that goes on to inspire A Christmas Carol. And what is The Christmas Carol? But it's a fantasy novel. It's a ghost story. And so that influenced Dickens. And poor Dickens, he hardly made any money. And he did one of the most amazing publishing feats in the history of publishing. He wrote, created, and had built the specialized books that had his book in it. And those books were promptly taken down to the docks, thrown on a boat, and brought to the United States and republished by everybody, and he never got a dime out of it. He fought desperately to keep money, keep a roof over his head. He literally went and reviewed plays and everything featuring his content that he never got a dime for. So it's an interesting read if you get a chance to read it. The other thing I want to give a shout out is Goody Santa Claus on a Sleigh Ride. If you have not read it, please go look it up. It's a beautiful poem. It's the Mrs. Claus. It's one of the most essential Mrs. Claus points of view. It's about Mrs. Claus, saying, hey, I'm doing all the work. You're getting all the credit. Let me take charge of the sleigh. And it's written by Catherine Lee Bates, the lady who gave us the words for America the Beautiful. And Catherine Lee Bates, if you're not familiar with her as a writer, she was a hugely influential writer for her time period in a time when women didn't have much power at all. And so there were several women like that who influenced writing and publication and everything and had huge impact on Christmas. And if you get a chance, check out a Goody Santa Claus on a Sleigh Ride because it's got amazing, wonderful imagery and world buildings. Just some fantastic stuff in there. Boop. All right. So the books. If you want to Xmas nerd out like poor old True, who wrote The Night Before Christmas? So this one by McDonald P. Jackson, this person takes a slightly different tack than a lot of the people before. First of all, I'm sorry, the other gentleman's name, not Moore, the other one. Henry Livingston, sorry. So Henry Livingston, none of the proof that he actually wrote it survived. There was a fire and some other things going on, and so we don't have any actual physical proof that he wrote this when he said he did. However, psychologically and using a data analysis of linguistics using phonemes. Am I pronouncing that right, Kat?
Phonemes.
Phonemes. So analyzing phonemes and looking at his body of work that did survive, a lot of people think that Henry Livingston was actually the person who wrote The Night Before Christmas. Hard to say. Same thing with Don Foster. Now, a lot of other people say that there's a body of work that Clement Clarke Moore wrote that actually makes it look quite the opposite. It looks like he very well could have written it. But the reason he didn't claim it was he was a professor at a college, and he saw that as this light, fluffy, fun little thing, and he wanted to be taken seriously as a professor. And so he was afraid to claim it until he was close to retiring. And so who actually did it? Don't know. But one book I would absolutely, that kind of sets the stage for all of this, and a person who's weighed in on this battle, The Battle for Christmas by Stephen Nissenbaum. It's one of the 3 books I ask everybody in CPW to read. I want everyone to get a copy of this and read it cover to cover. Okay? Fantastic book. It definitely sets the stage for the history of what Christmas is, or it sets the stage for what Christmas is going to be in the United States. Here's the book analyzing the phonemes and using scientific analysis. And then Don Foster, who uses a different technique to figure out who wrote what, author unknown. And he goes into not just the Santa debate, but also Shakespeare and some other people, where there's some possibility that other people actually wrote stuff that other people took credit for. Or, anonymous things that people say, well, who actually did write that? So all 3 of those books are wonderful researchers. And then, of course, Dietrich Knickerbocker's The Knickerbocker's History of New York Complete. Again, if you're a nerd, it's kind of fun, kind of hobbity. I think you'll like it. And then the book I recommend everybody get to do The Night Before Christmas, I recommend this one. Okay. I'll post the ISBN number later. I don't think I posted it. This one, the New York Times bestseller by Clement Clarke Moore, illustrated by Christian Birmingham. This one, it's inexpensive. It's got gorgeous illustrations, and one of the best parts of this beautiful book, aside from the fantastic print and the big beautiful illustrations, I'll show you the best part of this book. What happens when you buy these books is the dust covers get munched immediately. Oh, look, it's printed on the cover. And so they're not expensive. And so I recommend you buy 4 or 5 of these books, and a couple of them go in your prop bag. But the other thing you can do, if you're going to use the book to do a performance, is you buy 4 or 5 and you give them to the people who are with you if you've got a large crowd. And so when I do this at a library, I'll hand 1 to 3 librarians, and I'll say, all right, everybody move to the next page, and they all move to the next page, and they all show the book together. And so this is a fantastic book for that. Any questions so far? You're all being very quiet.
Hey, True.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Scott Becker again. I have The Night Before Christmas that's illustrated by Bruce Watley, and that is another beautiful book. I have the large book. The drawings are just, the artwork is wonderful. And the best part is, I think this year is, I was at Ollie's, that's a surplus store near us, and they had that same book in miniature board book format for like $3 a book, and I picked up a couple of sack loads of them. So I can read the story from the big book, and then I'll have a little book autographed and wrapped up to present it to the family.
Aw, that is so cool. All right, so 2 things. If you would, go back onto the Illuminate page and share the link if you would. and we'll see if that's doable. And remember, folks, I have a whole section in the first workshop where we talk about story reading and how to do it well. The emphasis here in this particular Zoom is going to be about performing it from memory, essentially performing the piece. Because I promise you, and I've had multiple students in this workshop say, true, once we started performing the piece as opposed to reading it out of the book, it was like night and day. Suddenly people were listening, suddenly people were participating, like night and day. So performing is taking the training wheels off, and that's what I want to help you folks do, is I want you to help take the training wheels off.
All right, we're ready to go back into the presentation?
Yes, please. And feel free to throw in questions. Kat, if you see any questions, feel free to come to me.
Well, definitely share on the alumni group which versions you've used that you've really enjoyed. And Stephen Price asks if anyone knows of a giant book in print. And so we'll keep our eyes open for that as an option as well.
Yeah, everyone, again, one of the important parts of the crew, if it's going to work, is we have to be there for each other and share. So here's something I wanted to throw at you, and that is that a lot of folks don't realize that there were other works. Santa was being done a bunch of different ways at that time period. And so there was a book called Old Santa Claus with Much Delight. It was part of a book called The Children's Friend, a New Year's Present for Little Ones from 5 to 12. And so if you look at that, and that, by the way, is public domain, you can go look at the links for it. If you go look at Old Santa Claus 1821, you're going to notice something. Number one, Santa is in red. It's 2 years earlier than the night before Christmas, okay? We have a reindeer and sleigh. And when you look at the illustration, it's pretty obvious that illustrator's never seen a reindeer, ever. He's got some wonky antlers, all right? But it's a reindeer and a sleigh, and Santa Claus is in red. Also, in the poetry, he gets into the whole naughty and nice. This particular version of Santa Claus is very judgmental. Saying, good boy, good, bad, so on and so forth. Here's another interesting thing. Old Santa Claus in 1821, not religious, right? And not in Dutch clothes. So got to remember, up to this point, because it was St. Nicholas and the birth of Christ and all that sort of stuff, Christmas, even though it was, a large part Yule and partying and so on and so forth, there was a strong religious element. But the Knickerbockers and the feeling of the area at that time was, we're going to start separating this, and we're going to make Santa Claus and Christmas a lot more secular, which, kind of rolls forward today, especially when we get the perfect storm of, domesticity, Santa Claus, and economics, and Christmas trees. So in the poem, it says, Old Santa Claus with much delight, his reindeer, one, drives this frosty night over the chimney and tracks of snow to bring his yearly gifts to you. So we're not dealing with anapestic tetrameter here so much. And so if we look at this poem, look at some of the phrases here. Some white as snow and neatly mended, others seem for pigs intended. This is kind of judgmental. And look at that drawing over there with Santa Claus, right? What's he doing? He's filling stockings right next to the bed. And actually, they've written in there, the children's friend, because they're giving a plug for their own document. But Santa is sneaking in and dropping off the presents. And so this is Santa in red before Nast, okay? Which up to that point, Father Christmas had appeared in a lot of different things. And then he talks about what he's going to deliver. He's not giving crackers, cannon, squibs, or rockets. He doesn't want anybody to get hurt. And then the other thing is I'm not going to give presents to annoy your parents, right? So no drums, no swords to make their sister fear, but pretty books to store their mind with knowledge of various kinds. And so kind of, this is coming from a different place. And then where I found the children naughty and manners crude and tempers haughty, thankless to parents, liars, swears, boxers or cheats, or base tale bearers. Now, one of the things I want you to look at the drawing there, what do you see? You see two kids sleeping side by side in a traditional bed. I think they were called carriage beds, and they've got the canopy over them. Why? Because houses back then didn't have central heating. And so pretty much once you banked the fire for the night, you were tucked into your bed, you'd pull the curtains round. Houses didn't have much in the way of in the way of insulation either, which we're going to get into. But a very kind of different kind of old Santa Claus, but again, few years before. But some of the things that we see, Santa and reindeer and sleigh, right? Delivering toys, Christmas. All of this is happening before Clement Clark Moore ever wrote it. Next slide. So we some things to know about The Night Before Christmas. It establishes the names of the reindeer, Santa's reindeer. Okay. The names of Santa's reindeer: Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Dunder und Blitzen. And by the way, when I perform it, I use Dunder und Blitzen because I'm kind of saying, look at me, I'm the real deal, I'm old. It's been, this is where we establish that Santa is fat and jolly, a little elf, very different from what we would assume the tall Catholic saint. It has been reprinted many, many times, tens of thousands. It is one of the most printed pieces of poetry on the planet, and in many, many languages as well. Moore, as I mentioned earlier, was in a very academic environment. He was a professor of Oriental and Greek literature, as well as divine and biblical learning, and at the General Theological Seminary of the Protestant Episcopal Church. Try to say that fast. And so would he at that time want to be associated with The Night Before Christmas? Not if he wanted to be taken seriously by his students, because he might have been sitting there in the classroom teaching something in ancient Hebrew, which he was an expert on, and Greek, and then had his students saying, Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, Blitzen, right? So there maybe was a good reason for him not to claim it right off. Next slide, please. Here, if you look to the left there, that's one of the first signed manuscripts. That's not the whole page. I didn't publish the other page. And then one of the first printings from a newspaper. If you look over there down at the bottom, that's where you see Dunder und Blitzen. Okay. And Kat, can you go back for just 1 second? Look at the handwritten version on your left. One of the things you're going to spot is, look at how it's written. Now Dasher, now Prancer, now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner, and Blitzen. So the question is, where they were putting the emphasis. Now look at the printed version on the right. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Dunder and Blitzen. Maybe when it was originally out, maybe the emphasis was in different places. All right. So why a sleigh? Well, got to remember, Washington Irving already established a flying sleigh. And, but, the thing is at this time, sleigh racing is a big deal. This is fast because sleighs can move fast. They are on ice, essentially. The song, Jingle Bells, essentially is a Beach Boys song, a song of its time period. And so if you went out in a sleigh, in a one-horse open sleigh, you were unescorted. Oh, my. And the horse was lean and lank. Misfortune seemed to thought. We got into a drifted bank, and then we got upsot. Upsot was double entendre for getting drunk. So there you were with Miss Fanny Bright. Why was Miss Fanny's Bright, I ask you? And then the next question is they're all drinking, okay? And then what's next? What would make a good Beach Boy song? Well, a day or two ago, the story I must tell, I went out to the snow, and on my back I fell. A gent was riding by. A gent was riding by. Hang on. A day or two ago, the story I must tell, I went out to the snow, and on my back I fell. A gent was riding by.
In a one-horse open sleigh.
In a one-horse open sleigh, he laughed as there I sprawling lie, ha ha, but quickly drove away. Okay, he's being chased away. Next verse. Now the time is right. Go to it while you're young. Take the girls tonight and sing the sleighing song. Just get a bobtail bay, 240 at its speed. Hitch it to a one-horse sleigh and crack, you'll take the lead. What is he saying in that piece? He is saying, go get a 426 Hemi. That's what he's saying. Go put a bigger engine in your car and you're going to beat all the other kids, and you and the girls are going to have a great time cruising the circuit and smoking everybody else. So what does that say? Sleighs are about speed. They're also, used to move everything in the winter, because you can load a ton of cargo and everything in them as well. And that was a big thing of that time period, was sledges. But essentially, he's putting Santa in something fast. That's what they're saying. Okay, Kat, back to the slides. The other thing, why reindeer? Well, first of all, it's that mysticism of the East, the far north. Not too many people know anything about reindeer. But the other thing is the symbology there is teamwork, right? Santa's working with a team. Why are there stockings? If you notice that even in the old Santa Claus, there were stockings up. Why? Well, that's anticipation. They know a gift giver is coming. Okay, and so there's a lot of little subtle psychological things happening. And so we have the transmogrification from a dour, tall priest into a roly-poly elf. Again, not human, not a saint. Some things are happening here. And then this is all the Knickerbocker gang at work. Laying a finger aside of his nose and giving a nod up the chimney he rose. With a wink of his eye and a twist of his head, some gave me to know that I had nothing to dread. There's a lot going on there. We'll get into that in just a little bit. The other thing that to remember when you're doing the night before Christmas, it's a wonder moment for the man of the house. He's amazed. It's his inner kid seeing this. This isn't a kid getting up out of bed. This isn't the woman getting up out of the bed, which, by the way, we've written a woman's version where the woman gets out of the bed. So that's in the files. Okay. Now, why may some people not love this piece? Well, first of all, it's been done to death. It's public domain, and there are literally thousands of versions. There's the Cajun version. There's the Texas version. There's the you name it version with a million different illustrations. So public domain, take it, pull it apart, put it back together again, have fun with it. I personally like the old version. I like that version because it gives me a chance to edutain. It's classic literature. This is one of the very first examples of fantasy writing in the United States that is continued on. It has two big things. Number one, it's very evocative, beautiful symbology and visuals, and it's singable. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. It's got this beautiful poesy and beat to it. Just fantastic stuff. Beep. All right.
So now we get to see all the lines.
So I'm going to stop there for a second. Does anybody have any questions?
We've set the context. We've talked a little bit about why and how and when. Ready to look at all the lines?
All right, here we go.
Some fun tips.
All right, I gave you the opportunity. All right, here we go. So I'm going to look at the line and then I'm going to perform the line for you. So 'twas the night before Christmas when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. So what are they doing there? So first of all, we're establishing it's night. Santa Claus visits at night. He's a magical creature. When all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse, which is a little odd because mice are nocturnal animals by and large. Okay, so this is really quiet. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care in the hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. And so there's no question they have created an invitation for him. They are expecting him to show up. They're literally doing essentially a ritual to get the magical creature to show up. That's all. Yes.
Said, this is Sean. Maybe the mice were quiet because they were expecting to get a gift too.
Could be. If they're in the stockings. Which, by the way, why hang the stockings by the chimney? Anybody want to go there?
One, to warm up the clothes, and two, that's how they dried laundry.
Exactly. There was no central air conditioning or heating, and drying clothes, especially in the winter when they're damp, when temperatures inside the house could get below freezing. If you wanted to have if your socks and everything got wet with the snow and everything, and you wanted to put on something warm and not freezing the next morning, bada bing, bada boom, you put them by the chimney, which hopefully had a great big fire that had been s'mored with heat coming off of it through that would last until the morning. And so there are two things happening here. First, they're getting their clothes all nice, warm, and snuggly. And number two, they're doing a ritual. They're inviting people. So the next line, the children were nestled all snug in their beds while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And so a couple of things. Children all snug in their beds. So we're assuming, yes, go ahead, Dale.
What I was going to let you finish the explanation of this line, but something that's always kind of fascinated / irritated / confused me is they should be excited for Christmas. So how is it that they're all out cold? Yeah. Shouldn't they all be like awake and being excited to see if they can catch Santa? But
so
they were exhausted.
I would say that there are two reasons for this. Number one of my areas of knowledge is fairy folklore. And so in terms of the Fae, if you had a relationship with the Fae, there were definitely things you did not do. You didn't want to mess with them. You didn't want to thank them. You wanted the good people to be on your side. Okay? And so I think he's tapping into a little bit of that. And the other thing to remember is their idea of Christmas, the idea of Santa Claus coming in and delivering presents is still fairly new. It's only like the last 20, 30 years probably. And Christmas at this point is actually more on New Year's Eve. And so there may be a couple of different dynamics going here that he wants the quiet house so the magical creature will come. If you think about it, Santa Claus is technically a cryptid. All right. So the children were nestled all snug in their beds while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. Hang on just a second. Excuse me. I'm allergic to PowerPoint, apparently.
Excellent use of your mute button there, sir.
Thank you. I was right on it.
I'll just take that out on post.
Yes, thank you. So what are sugar plums? Sugar plums are little rolled candies. They're like the almond pastilles. And so what the kids are dreaming of is there's candy dancing in their head. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. That's what's going on here. Okay. And then Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. So the beautiful illusion there is, first of all, we're in a house that is freezing. That's why we're and you can ask the kids, why are they putting on hats? Okay. Because house is freezing. And then the other thing is we had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. So he's kind of making the idea that they're going into hibernation, kind of like a bear. All right. Next one, please. Actually, Kat, go back. I'm going to perform this real quick. So imagine this all coming together. 'Twas the night. Actually, let me set it up. Well, you children, up at the North Pole, we have radio and television, things like that, but we also have the Northern Lights. And the Northern Lights, they tend to knock things out. And sometimes electricity, that sort of stuff, it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. We get weird effects. But you know what? We've been around for so long. We still love storytelling and singing and games and things like that. And I have to tell you, one of my favorite things is to hear somebody tell a story or a poem. And you know what one of my favorite poems is? The Night Before Christmas by Clement Clark Moore. Would you like to hear it? You would? All right, here we go. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings they were hung by the chimney with care, in the hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were lying all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. Candy. And Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. Okay. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave the luster of midday to the objects below, when what to my wandering eyes did appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. So there's a lot going on in here. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter. So why? What would be making that clatter?
The reins and the bells on the reindeer.
Yes, exactly. Because back in those days, if everybody had to have bells, because bells were the only way to keep people from running into each other. And horses on new fallen snow pulling a sleigh were almost completely quiet. And so if you had a fast moving sleighs coming into an intersection and they didn't have bells, they wouldn't even see each other, especially if snow was coming down. And so Santa definitely has bells on his sleigh. He's letting everybody know he's not going to run into any other skybound sleighs at that time. We don't know who may be up there. Okay. And so when out on the lawn, there arose such a clatter. And by the way, if you got into a sleigh race with somebody else and you went into the ditch, you had to cut off one of your bells and give it to the person who pulled your sleigh out of the ditch. That was part of the tradition. So I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. So now the perspective has changed. We've gone from a narrative point of view where they're just kind of generally describing to now the man himself is describing what he's doing. Away to the window, I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. So tore open the shutters. Why that? Tearing open the shutters is literally, the houses had poor insulation. The windows were precious, hard to make. And so they're opening up, the house had shutters on the outside and on the inside. And so the shutters were being torn open and threw up the sash. Well, those big heavy pieces of glass had to be dealt with very delicately. They would break very easily, especially when they're cold. And so there were counterweights inside the frame. And so the sash is literally the weights inside that frame and threw up the flash, the counter lever. That's what's going on here. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow. So now we're switching again. Now the guy is telling what he sees. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow. It doesn't get more magical and evocative than that. Anybody who's been up north, who's been around new fallen snow and moonlight, it is just straight up magical. Gave the luster of midday to the objects below. And also remember, this is a time when there weren't a lot of lights out there. Okay. And by the way, you need to explain what snow and moonlight might look like to kids who have never experienced it, like here in California. When what to my wandering eyes did appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. Okay. Why miniature? Why tiny reindeer? Remember how I was saying there's kind of a fairy illusion here? Again, not St. Nicholas. We're talking kind of a magical elf, and he's kind of throwing that illusion in there. So I'll go ahead and perform this part. When out on the lawn, there arose such a clatter. I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters, and threw up the sash. Blech. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave the luster of midday to the objects below, when what to my wandering eye did appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. Now I have to ask you, do I look tiny to you? Do my reindeer look small? Of course not. I was just far away. With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment he must be Saint Nick. Here's how friendly they are. He's not just a magical spirit. He's not just a powerful, legendary saint who's been around for over 1,000 years at this point. We're on a first name basis. I call him Nick. Okay. All right. More rapid than eagles, his coursers, they came. And so, again, to the kids, you might explain what a courser is or what coursing is. Back then, it was essentially racing. Dogs could be coursers, horses could be coursers. And he whistled, and he shouted, and he called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer, and Vixen. On Comet, on Cupid, on Donner, and Blitzen. Or when I do it, on Comet, on Cupid, und Dunder, und Blitzen. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away, all. So 2 things are happening. The man is first person now kind of brought us back to the big picture again. And so the little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be saying, Nick, oh, that is Santa Claus. More rapid than eagles. Got to remember back then, eagles probably one of the fastest things you're going to see flying. His coursers, they came, and he whistled and he shouted and he called them by name. Now, supposedly, Moore was inspired to write this poem by a Dutch sleigh driver that he had gone shopping with, and he came home and wrote the poem for his kids, supposedly. So whoever that Dutch sleigh driver was, who was very jolly and fat, apparently, we owe him a round of thanks. But listen to the meter as it's happening. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donder and Blitzen. Boom, da boom, da boom, da boom, da boom, da boom. It's I don't know if it's onomatopoeia, but it's definitely one of those little chunks of dialogue that will stick with you. It's a good mnemonic. And then top of the porch to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away, all. And so he's in the poem, he's rounding it out. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be Saint Nick. More rapid than eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and he shouted and he called them by name. Now Dasher, now Prancer, now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donder and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As the dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle and mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And here's that dialogue. As I say as the dry leaves because I like the meter better. As the dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle and mount to the sky. Again, this is stuff that if you lived in that time period, seeing this kind of stuff, you're much more in tune with nature than modern day kids are. A lot of kids may not know what a whirlwind is, may have never seen it. But if you lived out in the country back then, seeing the leaves get swirled up, not a problem. So up to the housetop, the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And so in that little statement, he's saying, guess what? He's here, he's arrived. And then in a twinkling, I heard on the roof. Now he's making it personal. Again, we're swinging back to his perspective. And then in a twinkling, I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. And so this is a lovely place because he's seeing, he's hearing, and then he's going to see the physical reaction because now he's going to meet Santa Claus first person. All right, I'll demonstrate that. As the dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle and mount to the sky, so up to the housetop his coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling, I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I pulled in my head and was turning around, down the chimney, St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur. Back to the slides. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. So again, bunch of little cool things are happening in here. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot. Well, first of all, that makes perfect sense if you live in the north, if you're a winter spirit. And his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. Notice he doesn't say red. He doesn't tell us what color the clothes are. And then a bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. So in this time period, peddling was part of life. Hobos and migrant workers just moved across the land all the time. Peddlers who were tinkers, who were copper menders, who were agricultural workers, who were sheep shearers, what have you. This is the time of that. And so he looks like a peddler just opening his pack. This is not something rare. He's describing a job. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. He just came in from the outdoors, folks. It must be cold out there. And what he's doing is he's describing the sweet old grandfather, the sweet old grandmother. And then his droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. Again, subtle, psychological. How is his beard as white as the snow if he's all covered with ashes and soot and just came down a working chimney? All of him would be covered in soot. It's the little subtle things. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke had encircled his head like a wreath. So this drawing here is not actually, this is a NAS drawing, is not actually a good demonstration of the stump of a pipe. What he has there is a houdin, or a long meerschaum style pipe, clay pipe. And back in those days, the working class, they would snap the stem on the pipe and put it in their mouths, just like Popeye. Because if you were working class, you couldn't carry one of those fragile stems around. And so if you were wealthy, if you had money, you would be sitting around, talking around the fireplace, eating toasted cheese and drinking ale with your long pipe. And tobacco back then was very expensive. So the stump of a pipe, he's saying that Santa is working class. And the smoke encircled his head like a wreath. What's that all about? That he's making an allusion to the old pagan Father Yule. He's essentially saying this is the Yule Father. Which, again, if you were, a professor of ancient studies, that might work. On the other hand, if you were somebody who had spent a lot of time up in the northern countries, that would work too. So either one of them might have written this line. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. Why is that important? If we look at all the different drawings of the early Father Christmas, the Father Christmas was usually tall and lean. But when we get into Dickens' age, when we see the Christmas, the Father Christmas of now, the spirit of Christmas now, he is showing wealth. He's showing the wassail bowl. He's showing the feast, the cornucopia. This is a way of saying the world is all right and everybody is going to get fed. We're all getting together and we're going to get fed. We're all going to be happy for a brief moment. And there's a reason for that as well, in the fact that just now, in the last month or so, it's been cold enough that they could actually slaughter a lot of the animals and not have to worry about refrigeration. They haven't been able to do that. And they also know that they can't keep those animals alive through the winter. And so they have to slaughter them. And so now suddenly we have fresh beef and fresh pork and other things like that we can now cook. And so everybody's going to get some meat, which they don't normally get a lot of. Chubby and plumper, a jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. Again, what is he making Santa? He's making Santa kind of a clown, kind of a jolly little nimble imp. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know that I had nothing to dread. So why is he doing that? He's doing that, he's saying, I see you, the twist of his head, and we're copacetic. Question? Okay. So, where was I?
Stump of a pipe.
The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, yar, and the smoke had encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him, in spite of myself. With a wink of his eye and a twist of his head, soon gave me to know that I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to work, and filled all the stockings and turned with a jerk. Okay, so he spoke not a word, went straight to work, and filled all the stockings and turned with a jerk, and laying a finger aside of his nose and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim ere he drove out of sight, Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night. So he spoke not a word, but went straight to work. Again, he's a man with a mission. He acknowledges him, but he doesn't engage. And there's a reason for this. He wants Santa, in the way the writer's writing it, he wants Santa to be a force of nature, a magical visitation. And the fact that he's kind of broken the law by being there, because when you deal with the Fae, if they spot you, bad things can happen. And remember, this is the time of Rip Van Winkle, the Headless Horseman. You know, all these different folklore things where there are taboos that you don't do around the Fae. And one of them could be seeing the Fae and them actually catching you at it, because bad things often happen at that point. They're called the good folk because you don't want to have anything to do with them. All right, back to the poem real quick. Laying a finger aside of his nose and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. Now, here's the thing. Laying a finger aside of his nose. Why is he doing that? That's not the magic. What he's saying to the guy is, you're in on it. We're both in on this hustle. Okay? That's the old Carney sign. And what he's saying is, I got you, you got me, right? We're together in this. You're not gonna tell anybody about this, right? And that's what he's doing. He's laying a finger aside of his nose and giving a nod up the chimney rose. The magic is the nod, not this. This is him saying, we're cool, right? And so laying a finger aside of his nose and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. And so when I do this, when I perform this, when I lay the finger aside of my nose, I always put my hand on my head because there might be a chimney around. And so when I perform it, and laying a finger aside of his nose and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. And most people will never see it. But some people go, why did you put your hand on your head? Now you have the internal logic. And giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. So the thing is when you're portraying this, excuse me for just a second. So when you're portraying this and laying a finger he sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. So when you're portraying this, there are two things that are happening. First of all, we're back to the man observing what's going on. Sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. So what I do is here's my sleigh, here's the reindeer. And so I'll gesture like this, of them he sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Ho, ho, ho! And then if I have my bells on me, I'll jingle. So, Kat, if I could ask a favor of you real quick. Can you go back like 2 or 3 of the dialogue slides?
Sure.
Okay. So, as the leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle and mount to the sky, we're back to that nature symbology. And then the prancing and pawing of each little hoof on the roof, we're hearing it. As I drew in my head and was turning around, that's him reacting. As you go through the poem, what you want to do is you want to visualize what all the characters are doing, what perspective you have in the poem. And that poem is going to come to life for you. And if you are seeing it, your audience will see it too. All right, we can get past all this, Kat. All right. So does anybody have any questions?
Yes,
Go ahead, Nunn.
actually, Craig just asked in the chat, why does the poet write Happy Christmas instead of Merry Christmas?
Because Happy Christmas was the more traditional English version. You got to remember, this part of New York and everything is mostly English Protestant. And so he's being a little bit more English. And the Merry is actually kind of the older, wilder, Anglo-Saxon feel to it. Any other questions?
Would either one of those be correct? True.
Yes, but I being the nerd that I am, I like to do the Happy Christmas. And that's why I do the Dunder and Blixen, because I want them to go, oh my God, he is the real guy. He uses the real old version when I do the poem. All right. And then, by the way, in the links that we're going to send you, you can see me perform this. I did drop a line in the online version. There's a rap version as well. But there are 2 videos that you can look at where you can watch me doing the piece all together. All right, back to the slides real quick. And again, anybody has any questions, throw them out there, because let's get it out there. The night before Christmas can be used to teach. Oh my goodness, early America, religious shifts, what was going on, how the Puritans banned Christmas, publishing, the how the printing press and everything and media worked back in those days. English, reading, speaking. A wonderful poem to help people if they're not, like, for instance, native English speakers and so on and so forth. There's a chance they probably already heard this poem, but in their native language. And so you can kind of help them practice this in English. Rhyming words, similes, metaphors, all of that stuff. Yep. And then poetry, you could have them write their own version of the poem to anapestic tetrameter or add verses to it. And that, my friends, is the end of this rhyme. Let's all celebrate. It's Christmas time. Props to the man. Love is what it's all about. Big C, North Pole, mic drop out. Ho, 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 yo. And then, of course, you can sing it and interpret it. You can sing it in scat. You can rap it. You can bounce back and forth between music. And then, of course, there are tons of plays that have been done with this poem. So fantastic linkage to teaching. So if you want to memorize it, go online, download the version that we have in the files. Use blue painter's tape and put a copy in your car, put it up on all your bathroom mirrors and practice it daily. If you screw up, just keep going. Try singing it. And it doesn't have to be a tune you could just sing whatever crazy tune helps you fit the words. Because all you're doing is you're teaching your brain to get from one point to another. And if music helps it, yay team. Try doing it out of order, so do part of the bottom part and then go back up and then go out of different orders. They will definitely help you. And as Kat pointed out, using index cards can be a wonderful way if you break it down into couplets. Mentally visualize who's doing what. As I pointed out, we've got a bunch of different perspectives happening in the poem. If you screw up, just keep going. Don't do a reset. I mean, if you're still learning, that's fine. But what you want to do is you want to train yourself to keep going, even if you're screwing up. And I have screwed this up many times in front of an audience. And so I like to have a printed copy handy nearby, or I look at somebody, I'm going, where am I here? And they go, I'm sorry, I'm 1,753 years old. I can, squirrels. And then do it in distracting places, do it while you're doing traffic, do it while you're, in a laundromat, do it in different places. So you're challenging yourself to keep the focus. When you do it in the mirror so you can practice. Not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings, they were hung by the chimney with care. So learn to physicalize the poem and it will definitely help you memorize it. And then do it with somebody else. Who here has The Night Before Christmas memorized? Anybody?
There are hands up to the cameras.
I'm really close. I'm really close.
I've got 3 or 4 people with their hands up for certain.
All right.
I've got a couple people waving
All
their
right.
hands sideways.
So Kat, just pick one and then I'm going to play with that person.
Well, Dale, you had your hand up. Do you have it fully memorized? All right.
All right. So Dale, you ready to rock and roll?
You're on.
All right. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse.
The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. True.
And Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap, when out on the lawn there arose such a clatter. I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter.
Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave a luster of midday to objects below.
When what to my wandering eyes did appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be
Saint Nick.
Saint Nick. Keep going.
Oh, knew in a moment must be Saint Nick. More rapid than eagle. No, that's not it. I knew in a moment it must be Saint Nick.
More rapid than eagles.
Yeah, more rapid than eagles, my reindeer they came. I do it in the first person. My reindeer they came, and I whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, all.
As the dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle and mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I pulled in my head and was turning round down the chimney, St. Nicholas
came with a bound. I was dressed all in fur from my head to my foot. My clothes were a little tarnished with ashes and soot. And with the bundle of toys I had flung on my back, I probably looked like a peddler just opening my pack. My eyes surely twinkle, my dimples are merry, my cheeks get red like roses, and my nose like a
cherry. Don't eat the cherry nose. My nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, yar, and the smoke had encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly.
I'm chubby and plump, a quite jolly old elf. And Papa laughed when he saw me, in spite of himself. But a wink of my eye and a twist of my head soon gave him to know he had nothing to dread. He was afraid he was going to be on the naughty list.
You look like they're going to be a while, so
I'll
just go ahead and feed her.
With a wink of my eye and a twist, with a wink of his eye and a twist of his head, soon gave me to know that I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to work and filled all the stockings. Yes, and then turned with a jerk, and laying a finger aside of his nose and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose.
I sprang to my sleigh, to my team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But Papa heard me exclaim before I drove out of sight, Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
Thank you very much for doing that, Dale. That was a
round
little
of applause for Dale.
Woo! So again, first person, that's the way he did it. Fantastic. Richard, you have a question?
You're going to need to unmute.
I was just raising my hand that I have it memorized when I did your weekend up in La Habra.
Okay, cool. All right, sir. Kat, let's get to the slides and let's hammer through those. So we've already covered, how to perform it. Okay, so we're back to here. Have you done an interactive version? Yes, I talk to them all about it when I'm performing it. So, not even a mouse. And so I'm going to talk about that right now, in fact. So you want to fall in love with the prosody, the musicality of the piece. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. And you can change that into any number of ways, different beats and patterns. You want to find a place for key gestures. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. Right? So you find those gestures. And so like this one, really handy and evocative. You want to add info bits, you know, and mama in her kerchief and I in my cap. It just settled our brains for a long one. Do you wear a cap when you go to bed? No? Why do you think they were wearing a cap? And so this is how you edutain the piece. You can change the volume and the tempo and then get them. So 'twas a night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings they were hung by the chimney with care, in the hopes that Saint Nicholas soon would be there. The children were lying all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads, and Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn, there arose such a clatter. I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. You see how I'm changing the pace, the tempo, the volume? This is all stuff you can do with the pieces. And you can have pauses. Maybe you see that. And so you can also have fun. You know, if you're into the poem and you're saying, he filled all the stockings and then turned with a jerk. Do you want to see how I do it? Go to all the houses and fill all the, put all the presents on the tree. You ready? Here we go. Yep. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Pretty cool, huh? Yep. That's as long as it takes me. Oh, you want to see me do it? Oh, okay. We'll do it in slow-mo. Hang on a second. Ding ding. Meow meow. Yes. So it looks something like that. People will be laughing their butts off. You do the fast and then the slow-mo version and add it in sound effects and everything. They will be laughing their butts off. All right. Back to the slides real quick.
True. I find too that if I stop and explain something, that I usually go to that same last line that I had just finished to get back into the rhythm, and it gets everybody back in the story.
That's a good point. Let's make certain we mention that somewhere, so I add it to my notes. So you can create jump-ins like not even a, and the kids say mouse, exactly. And then you can add sound effects. You can say the moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave the luster of midday to the objects below. So it's cold and at night. What does that sound like? Can you make the sound with me? And then, as I've already shown you with the, we could do it a performing duo. So what I was doing with Dale was I was illustrating. So if you have a Mr. and Mrs. Claus, and one person is carrying the story, the other person can be doing the mouse, eating the sugar plums, observing everything, acting out the story. And then you could also alternate who is doing what. You can take turns doing alternating verse, which we just did. You can sing it with and you could sing it with alternating tunes. So I could do it with one way, like let's go with 'twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings they were hung by the chimney with care, in the hopes that Saint Nicholas soon would be there.
Dun, 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 dun.
One of my favorite musicals. I'm sorry.
And then the next person could pick it up with The children were lying all snug in their beds while the visions of sugar plums danced in their heads, and Mom in her kerchief and I and my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. Went out on the lawn, there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters, and threw up the sash. And then you could pick a different tune, and you could do it with alternating tunes all the way through, which would be just hilarious fun. And by the way, do we have more than a few songs? Oh, yes, we do. If you can get away with, if you're in a smoky bar and you go, "'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse." I mean, the night before Christmas to the house of the rising sun. I'm sorry. It's these weird things that make me happy. All right. Who else uses anapestic tetrameter? Dr. Seuss. A lot of his stuff is written to anapestic tetrameter, which also means you can sing them. By the way, the Sandra Boynton books, all those kid books, they can all be sung. Fantastic. Eminem, The Way I Am, written in anapestic tetrameter. Lord Byron did it. Greek tragedies. You can rap it. "'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse." You can scat it. "'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings they were hung by the chimney with care, in the hopes of St. Nicholas soon would be there." So you can do it many, many different ways. So here are some handy resources for you all. We'll pull this together as a document. Sorry, Kat. We'll pull this together as a document with these links and everything in it. And so you can go to me doing the night before Christmas. It's already up on YouTube. I want to warn you, there was a mistake in that. You'll find it. You'll know it when you see it. There's the true rap version. So the two things about the rap version: number one, understand that rap version was done with no money and no budget. And so we didn't have a metronome. We didn't have a beat track. It was just me in front of a green screen in a guy's garage. So, and with no budget. So is it fun? Yes. Is it perfect? No. And then the other resources there, we have a first person version of The Night Before Christmas. We have a Mrs. Claus version of The Night Before Christmas, and we have the training one where everything is broken down into couplets. And that's the one I recommend you print out, put on your bathroom mirrors, tape them down, and go to town. So, why do you want to be doing this? Number one, you're passing on a fundamental piece of Christmas lore. How many of you have done a gig recently where you're doing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer had a very shiny nose, and nobody said, like a light bulb or like a flashlight? Most of the kids now do not know the interstitial stuff for Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. You have to get their adults to do it and pass it on. And so what we're doing when we pass on The Night Before Christmas, we're passing it on not to just these kids here, but their kids' kids and their kids' kids. You're promoting literacy and learning, which is fantastic. You're promoting poetry and public performance. Most people in their day-to-day lives have never heard anybody recite a poem. How sad is that? And then, of course, you're promoting history. You get to talk about all the cool things that are going on. You give yourself a chance to perform. You know, yes, it's easy enough to ask the kids, what do you want for Christmas? Have you been good? How old are you? You know, you can ask the 4 basic questions, but how much better is it for you to get a chance to actually bring some magic to life? How cool is that? You're getting them an in-person performance. Again, something is with somebody they can reach out and touch and say hi to. The days of our childhoods when we sat around the campfires and shared stuff, or sat around and entertained each other, you know, because there were only 3 channels on TV, right? Those days are gone. Now it's a good chunk of the population is trapped by the screens. They don't know how to interact and storytell and share with each other. And so when we do this, we're bringing a part of human civilization, the give and take of what it is to share performances and imagination and magic with each other. And that's a rare thing indeed. I am telling you here, as a professional storyteller, it is very weird that I can tell stories of all different cultures and all sorts of things and cannot get booked. But if I put on a Santa suit and come to your house and tell the story and sing songs, it's somehow copacetic. But if I said to somebody, hey, do you want to hire me for St. Patrick's and have me come entertain your family? They'd go, why would I do that? Our world has changed. And so we need to fight to keep the magic of Christmas and the magic of the performing arts alive. It's up to us. And so that's why I'm saying, yay, you. Kat, can we go back to the slides real quick? And not only this, but when you do this stuff, when you talk about how you feel about the pieces and you interact with them and ask them how they feel about the pieces, you're establishing yourself as a person. They will walk away years from now going, well, the night before Christmas, and because you're CPW trained and because you're an A-list performer, you're going to say, heck yeah, I can do it. Want to do it now? Whereas a lot of the other people out there have never even scraped the surface of what it is to be a good performer. So, yay you. Next slide. And there you go. That copyright slide is a little out of time, isn't it?
No.
It's 2023?
We are still in 2023.
Okay.
2024 hasn't happened yet. Yes, you're filling your 2024 calendar. But right now, it's still 2023, baby.
I know.
200 years since
it's not easy
poem.
being a Time Lord. So, all right. So we're going to open it up real quick. Any questions? I just dumped a ton of information. Was this helpful to you? Is my question. What do you folks think of that? Was it helpful?
Lots of thumbs up. I can't even count them all. That was awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Well, I apologize, True. I came in late. When is this going to be up on the page?
That's a Cat question.
I almost always have it done, usually about 24 hours. Sometimes it takes as many as 48 hours because Mrs. Claus has the day job. But I'll get it up within a day or two.
And then if we ask Kat very nicely, maybe she can make a PDF handout out of the slides that'll go into the files. Okay.
You might be cooking fancy dinner for 3 weeks at this rate.
I might be cooking a lot of fancy dinners. But here's the two things. Folks, I'm here to tell you, now is the time to contact your clients and say, would you be interested in celebrating the 200th anniversary of The Night Before Christmas? If you reach out to them and tell them that you can, recite it, read it, story read it, or perform it or sing it, a lot of these people will go, oh yeah, and that's something new and different. Because remember, Santa performances often kind of seem a lot alike. And so this is something very special that we get to pull out of our sleeves, and we won't be able to do it for another 100 years, or at least 50.
I ever since I saw you do the rap version, I have a bucket list dream of being on stage with somebody doing the beatbox and having flashcards to get the audience to go. So 'twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. I think it would, you need about 40 slides, but I think that would be so much fun.
I'll talk to you about this, Dale, but we may have to make that happen. Now, I will tell you, if you do get somebody to beatbox with you, you need to make certain this person is a competent beatboxer.
Right.
Because I've had a couple of people beatbox with me, and it was a train headed down the wrong tracks.
And it's 4 minutes long. The guy has to be able to, or the guy or gal has to be able to keep going.
Well, here's a funny.
I can't do it less than 4 minutes.
I can do it in 2 minutes.
Can you? Well, okay. I don't ever talk. I talk fast, but.
'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring.
Stop. It's because he's a nutter, and he'll try practicing under 2 minutes, and he'll make me stopwatch him. So, I mean, if you want to do this, you could be a nutter And you can get your friends or just your own phone.
Okay.
Stopwatch yourself.
All right,
but
Kat.
I'm just
Kat,
saying.
what you don't know, or maybe you have forgotten, is that I have now made that a standing challenge. I'll give $100 to anybody who can beat me time wise. And Tom Pelletieri beat me up in Michigan. I forgot a line. I mean, I was under time. I beat his time, but I forgot a line, and so he won $100 off of me. So when we get together again, folks, if you want to have a TNBC off, I'm there for you.
He has to carry $100 bill on him because he makes this challenge.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
I have also had to endure the speed round memorization of this poem from my Santa. So I have been in your shoes. I have had to listen to the speed round. I can do it faster. Yes, I know you can. Thank you.
So
all I can think of is have another Nutter Butter peanut butter sandwich cookie.
I have to say that this is not the piece that I needed to be memorizing tonight. I am supposed to be performing Double Double Toil and Trouble tomorrow night.
Okay.
That is
All right.
what I'm supposed to be memorizing,
All right.
but this has been great. This has been really, really good. I appreciate the work and all of the references and pulling all this together because I hear a lot of this.
Halloween,
Halloween. Thank you. Yes, I have my visual aid printed out for my hayride. I am set with that. Thank you.
Okay. Well, all right. So I just want to say this is the time to get it out there. I'm super proud of you all. Thank you all for showing up. Can I ask two favors of you? Favor number one, if you know somebody who would be a good candidate to learn it, kick them the CPW basic file and give that to them as something that they can practice with. I don't have any problem with that. And then the other thing is that if you would talk to all the other people out there and tell them what kind of great training you're getting for free as part of being CPW alumni, getting you ready for this season. Because unfortunately, the school isn't going to promote itself. Well, we're going to try, but it's your word of mouth. It's you helping promote it that's going to keep me out from under Kat's feet and on the road. So we want to make that happen.
Send those checks home.
Any last questions? All right, here we go. Making magic happen.
Making magic happen.
We bring the jolly.
We bring
bring
the
the
joy.
We see, we hear, we bring the love throughout the year.
We see,
We
we
see,
hear,
we
we
hear,
bring the love
we bring
throughout
the
the
love
year.
Throughout the year.
All right, so proud of all of you. If I don't get a chance to talk to you before you get your seasons going, just remember, if you have questions, feel free, or challenges, and you're doing cool stuff, share it in the alumni group because we are stronger together. So proud of you. Ho, 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 we've got to go.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.